Portfolio Composer, episode 152.
You're listening to the Portfolio Composer podcast with your host and coach Garrett Hope, where he teaches you what it takes to master the business end of writing music through mindset, marketing, and business skills. Make sure to sign up for the newsletter at theportfoliocomposer.com for exclusive offers, business insights, and information not shared on the podcast. And now, for this episode of the Portfolio Composer.
So, that leads to that thought that for any kind of work, and maybe this is fundamentally this advice I can give to young composers, is this, that your composing doesn't matter how you feel. And it's not about expressing yourself, which is a curious thought in our culture. It is about showing up and doing the work and letting the music tell you what it wants to be. So I have a 3-word motto, which I offer to people, and it is just show up.
Hey composers, it's Garrett here. As many of you might have heard, David Maslanka passed away last week, and I am taking this opportunity to rebroadcast the interview I did with David and his son Matthew, who runs David's business, earlier in this year. David, if anything, did show up. He was a gentle spirit with a vast imagination and a highly creative mind. And in fact, after we had completed this interview, I followed up with him and I told him that I regretted not pursuing his comments on meditation because I too practice an almost daily meditation work, something that has had profound impacts on my professional and my personal lives. And this is what David said to me in response. It was a pleasure to have our discussion time, and thanks for the work you are doing for composers. For me, a very simple definition of meditation is the ability to pay conscious attention to something. As players and composers, we have learned how to do this, whether we think of it as anything special or not. The difference between this and a meditation practice is taking one's mind as the object of attention. I started working in this direction on my own many years ago. I wasn't following any particular system. My interest began with learning a bit of self-hypnosis for the sake of relaxation. This led to what Jung called active imagination, which is consciously following internal images. I found that I could travel internally in an unending natural landscape. My sense of it now is that this landscape was the mind's representation of the unconscious, and that I could travel consciously in what amounts to dream time and space. There is a lot to this. There is the personal unconscious, then the archetypical unconscious, which is a manifestation of a universal force. I found that I could ask questions and receive what amounted to dream images in response. This work has been the foundation of my composing since A Child's Garden of Dreams 35 years ago. Also the foundation for working with personal issues. David, I thank you for your time. I thank you for your wisdom once again. May you and your beloved rest in peace. And for those of you who have not heard this interview, I think you will find it inspiring and eye-opening. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Portfolio Composer. I am your host and coach, Garrett Hope. In December of 2016, I had the good fortune to be able to attend the Midwest Clinic in Chicago, which is one of the largest music conferences in the States. Over 17,000 band and orchestra directors were there. And while I was walking the showroom floor, I had another great fortune to run into the composer David Maslanka in his booth. And I also had the chance to meet his son, Matthew, who runs David's business. And I've invited them both onto the show, and they've agreed to join us today for a discussion about music business and the wind band world. So welcome, David, and welcome, Matthew.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Thank you for having us.
David is best known for his more than 40 works for wind ensemble. His music is deeply informed by meditative explorations of dream spaces. And Matthew is the owner and general manager of Maslanka Press. He publishes many of David's works and manages David's residencies and commissions. This is so interesting to me how the two of you have set this business up. So I would just like to start by asking, how did this happen that Now, David, your job is primarily to write music, and Matthew, you're running the business. How did this come about?
So I started doing copying, making music manuscript preparation of Dad's works when I was in, early high school. So I was about 14. I started doing his copying. And I kept on doing his copying all through college, growing up. When I got out into the real world, I persisted. I've been doing music prep for the whole time. Now, Dad had been with Carl Fischer for many years and was getting disenchanted by the level of service that they were able to offer him in terms of promotion and availability of music. So Dad started the idea, can we do this ourselves? Can we take care of this? They tried a little bit with my sister and my mother helping out, but kind of became apparent that it wasn't going to be able to be at the scale that they were hoping for. And I have loved Dad's music for my whole life and volunteered to let's see if we can put this together. I have a strong technical background in music prep. I have a strong design background in publication design and a strong technical background in web development. And I thought, I can put this all together. I can make this work. So I read an enormous amount. I studied an enormous amount, and I have been working very, very hard over the last 4 years to make this a reality.
I'll add too that I think Matthew is a very fine musician, and not only that, he's probably the person on this planet who knows most about my music from the inside. He's been my copyist for 20 years, so it's a really, really good match to have all this work.
Well, and you have the built-in factor that you can trust each other. It's not like you're hiring an outside person.
Well, there is that, yeah.
So it sounds like, Matthew, you are still doing the engraving and copying and everything to do with publishing, and currently you are self-publishing through Maslanka Press.
That's right. I happily have been able to be in a position to start getting some help with the day-to-day and with the engraving. I take care of all the finishing work, but happily I can start managing more and being in the trenches a little less.
And when you were growing up, were you engraving things into the computer from handwritten scores, or were you cleaning up computer scores?
No, Dad's always used a pencil. Continues to do so. I started using Finale probably version 2.1, something or other, in 1996 from a middle school band director who had loaned / pirated a copy from. And I fell in love with it immediately. And Dad saw that I was into it and said, hey, turns out I've got a bunch of music over here. You might be interested to check it out.
And David, how did you end up coming into the wind ensemble and concert band world to begin with? Because that's where I first encountered your music as a clarinet player in high school and university. And it seems that the majority of your catalog is for that ensemble. How did that happen?
Well, the majority actually isn't, but I have written now, you said 40, I've written over maybe 55 works for wind ensemble, but that's about a third of my total output. And I started as a clarinet player as well. And I was in bands all through public school and into university. And although I had orchestral experience, the wind band sound seemed to be the thing that caught my ear. And it was just something that I wanted to do. And as I began to develop as a composer, gotten through graduate school, gotten my first teaching position, the first thing I thought I wanted to write on my own was a concerto for piano and wind ensemble, and that turned out to be my very first piece. It was not commissioned. There was no performance guarantee, but I simply was writing the piece. It turned out, with some extenuating circumstances, that piece had its initial performance by the Eastman Wind Ensemble, and by sheer accident, Frederick Fennell was the conductor at that time. And so my very first piece was premiered by arguably the best wind ensemble in the country with the best conductor. So that was my
spoiler alert, it went pretty well.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. It was an awfully difficult piece, and if I'd had any lesser performers, I think that it may be that would not have gone in that direction. But it turned out exceptionally well. I was then given recommendations to send the music to other people, and one other conductor who took it up was John Painter at Northwestern University. And John, again, was at the center of wind conducting in the United States at that time. He performed the work, and then he sat me down and said, would you be interested in writing a piece for me? And of course, that turned into the Child's Garden of Dreams piece. And that piece made its mark. And from that point, it took several years after that, but then commissions began to come on a more regular basis for wind music. So it's been a happy relationship, in fact, a wonderful relationship over the years. And I've produced, I think, a significant body of work for the medium.
Sure. I would say that you have. And you've been very fortunate to get some of the most influential wind ensemble directors, I mean, people who helped define the genre in the mid part of the 20th century, to support you and give you a leg up.
Well, that was that wonderful accident that started me off. You can't plan that. You can't say how to do that. It was just the accident of fate that made it possible.
But what you can do is continue to write amazing music.
Yes.
Well,
I mean, you show up, you do the work. I mean, you keep on saying to me, like, show up every day.
Yes, right. So, I mean, that leads to that thought that for any kind of work, and maybe this is fundamentally this advice I can give to young composers, is this, that your composing doesn't matter how you feel. And it's not about expressing yourself, which is a curious thought in our culture. It is about showing up and doing the work and letting the music tell you what it wants to be. So I have a 3-word motto, which I offer to people, and it is just show up. If you remember nothing else about this, just show up.
There it is. We're 10 minutes in and we can call it quits, right? There's
good to go.
Yeah. Good to go.
But the David, what you did, and I think Matthew is pointing at this, is you didn't let that just become the end. And this is a mistake I made as a young composer. I was very fortunate that my very first formal composition won an award. And then I just kind of thought, well, the heavens have parted and doors will open. And that's not what happens. You have to be proactive and walk through these things and continue knocking on doors. And I'm willing to predict that you did that. What kind of steps did you do that beyond these happy accidents to get the ball rolling, or to keep it rolling, let's say?
Well, this is a very, very difficult issue for any composers. Composers, for the most part, are introverted people. And I don't know if you are, but I am. And it was extremely difficult for me to put myself forward. So my fundamental was always composing. I was driven to compose, and so I wrote music. And I tried to follow the leads as best I could. I'd simply contact the people that were offered to me, and then people began to contact me. It is just one step at a time. You find the performance you can, and then you work with the people if you have that opportunity. And those are the building blocks for making the career aspect of it. I suppose others could be much more aggressive about seeking the contacts. It took me a long incubation phase, you might think of it that way. I started composing when I was 18. The Child's Garden of Dreams piece was written 20 years later, and that was essentially my breakthrough piece for Winds. And, it had successes with other music, but individual performances, no grand success as such. And it just simply took that long. It's been a continuous, slow movement of accumulation. And I can say that if you make the beginning efforts to get performances, and if your music is any good, first off, if your music has something and that people do respond to it, then it begins to open, however gradually. A single performance might happen, like you had your first performance and you had your prize and you said, well, the heavens have opened. Well, that fire went out pretty quick.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. And so you have to realize that the fire goes out. And you say, oh, and then you try another and another and another. And if you continue enough, then some burning embers start to glow, and eventually some smoke forms, and then eventually a small flame happens that doesn't go out. But this is a long haul. I've been at this for, I've been writing music for 55 years. And there were the moments in which, without my seeming to have done anything, there was a sort of an exponential advance in the number of performances, and then it would advance again and again and again. And so success is about persistence at that basic level of writing good music. That's the start. You can't get away from that. And then a bit at a time, having people respond to it, and then that collects. But if you're persistent, like I say, it's about persistence, about who you are. So I think maybe my best quality as a musician and as a composer is simply persistence.
So you're talking about persistence here. It's not just about going after the next commission or making sure your network know who you are, but it also comes into the music as well. Another one of the things that you keep on saying is about how a lot of works get to the hard part and then stop.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that people respond to most strongly about your music is that you get to the hard part and then you figure out the hard part and you go on.
Yeah.
And that's what we all look for in art. It's like, how do we deal with this stuff?
So you were teaching after you finished university and you were writing music. You were obviously raising a family. And how did you manage the business of writing music at the same time as you were doing everything? And this is before Matthew is able to come on board as a business partner.
Well, I think there's a period in life when you're trying to establish yourself, and you will work regardless of the hours and of the strain. So from 1974, I had finished my first teaching position. I had moved to New York City in 1974. And between 74 and 90, several teaching positions in the city. Finally got a tenured position. I'm traveling on the subway an hour and a half to get to my teaching job. And there's that. My wife is in school at Hunter College working on a doctorate. Between 1982 and 85, of course, Matthew is born, his sister is born. So she's got two young kids working on a doctorate. I'm traveling back and forth on the subway and at the same time composing all the music that established my reputation. So the answer is you just work like a demon. And I have to say about composing is that, yes, it's work, and yet it has to start with that internal pressure that makes you a composer. It isn't that I had to, it wasn't, what am I trying to say? I had to do this. I was pushed to write music, and so I was constantly at it to try to make this happen. And when people offered me a commission, say for a 10-minute piece, the result might be a symphony. And that happened with Symphony No. 4 with Jerry Junkin commissioned the 10-minute concert piece, and he got Symphony No. 4.
Heck, with Symphony 2 and Symphony 3 as well.
Oh, yeah, 2 and 3. 2 was commissioned from John Painter for a concert piece for his North Shore Band, and it turned into Symphony No. 2. Gary Green commissioned me for Symphony. No, he wanted the 15-minute concert piece. He got a 50-minute symphony. All right. So that was me. I had to do this.
The copyist was surprised.
I'm sure you were.
I wasn't around at this point, but I can imagine the grad student looking at this going, wow.
Well, Green was the guy who wound up copying the damn thing himself.
Wow.
That's why it looks like that.
Yeah.
Too bad the copyright is with the publisher, right? Or you could re-release it in a new edition, make the notation.
That's on the list.
Yeah, there's a long list.
It's a very long list.
So let's fast forward here. You have decided at some point to leave teaching and to just write music. How did you know you had crossed that tipping point?
Well, it started with my wife telling me that I'm working 2 full-time jobs as a teacher and as a composer. She says, it's killing you, so make a choice. All right, that was the beginning of maybe 2 years of really serious thinking about what this was and who I was. Really a lot of work to finally come to the understanding that my real reason for being on this planet this time was to write music. And I said, okay, having made that choice, how to go about that? I always like to think that my wife and I have always been kind of crazy in the same direction. If I have a good idea or want something, she says, yeah, how do we do it? And vice versa. So I said, I'm a composer. And on the strength of that, I quit my job and we made our way to Montana. And picked Montana because we both had an idea in our minds about what the place needs to look like. We thought we needed to have mountains and pine trees and not too many people. And eventually that led us to this place. So on the strength of that, we left New York City and set up here. There was no guarantee. We had a little bit of money, enough maybe to last a year. But that was it. And so we had to figure out how to live and how to move forward with the teaching, the composing career. I guess something in both of us always had this faith that this was going to work. I never looked back. I never thought that this was a bad idea. We had our difficult times, but I always had something in me that said, okay, let's go, let's do this. Yeah. So, go ahead.
Matthew, how old were you at this point when you moved to Montana?
This is 1990. So I was 8 years old. I had my birthday in the car somewhere in North Dakota?
Minnesota, I believe.
Minnesota, yeah.
Wow. And so it was only a few years after this that you began working for your dad.
Yeah, I actually started working for him making copies and of scores, like on an actual copy machine, and making dubs of tapes so that he could send them out to people who were interested.
Oh, right. Yeah, because you used to actually have to mail things, right?
God forbid.
And let alone a tape cassette. I remember having to do that too. So at this point, you're composing, and have you formed your actual press yet? Have you created your company?
Oh, heavens no. That happened in 2012. So Dad was with Fisher for all of this, and a handful of other people from time to time. Like, yeah. But yeah, it's it was a very minimal. Like, people would contact Dad for, I'd like to hear more of your music. I'd like to know more about you. And, he was the guy on point, and he had to handle that.
Yeah. Well, you have to do it all when you're a freelancing composer.
Oh, sure. Yeah. That's the story.
Matthew, you had said earlier in the interview how when you and your dad decided to formally make a go of it in the self-publishing world, you did a lot of reading and you did a lot of studying. And you had listed that you have skills in engraving and web design and print design. How did you learn the business things? Because you had also said that you took all those items off of your dad's plate so he could focus just on writing music.
I went and I got the syllabus for Harvard MBA, and I got all those books, and then I read them. And I did as much as I could. This was obviously it'd be really helpful to have a class. Obviously it'd be really helpful to be in an environment where people are doing this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But what I'm reading for is, what's the stuff how can I make the fewest dumb mistakes?
Right. Yeah.
I have a set of business objectives, and I'm reading with those in mind. There's a real difference between my actual college experience and my own business training.
Tell me more about that. I want to interrupt you, and I want to dig into that comment. What does that mean?
Yeah, my college experience I was a euphonium performance major at Michigan State University, and did a master's in euphonium performance at Indiana University. And I started a doctoral program in brass pedagogy also at Indiana. Got all the way through to the end of the road, and got to write a paper and went, actually, I don't want to teach. And what's going on with my life? And I'm still paying Sally Mae a hefty chunk for the privilege. But the thing that was most distressing to me when I left college was that there was almost no emphasis on, how do you actually, make it as a musician? How do you actually, what is networking? How do you show up? How do you write a business letter? How do you get a loan? How do you manage a balance sheet? It's all about craft there. It's all about, how do you be the best performer you can be? And they sort of imagine that, well, the rest of it will take care of itself. Turns out, no.
Yep. Matthew, this is the exact reason why I started the podcast, because when I decided to step away from the academic world, I now had a set, I was a composer, but I was an academic composer. And I had to figure out, well, how do I actually do this as a business? And so this is the journey I've been on. And it sounds like you were on the same journey. And the business that you and your dad started within, what'd you say, 2012?
Yeah.
This is going to be different than the way you were running the business, David, in the 1970s. And
well, of course. Yeah.
So it's a whole different set of objectives and even skill sets, I would think. But Matthew, what are one of the questions I had prepped you with were, what are 3 business tips? And let's kind of go there. What are 3 things that you wish someone had told you about when you guys were starting this journey, or you had to learn?
Make sure you know where the money's coming from and where the money's going. I am not particularly well suited internally to taking care of money. It's been a weird and hard thing in my life, and having to do it for somebody else, especially somebody who depends on it, has added a level of urgency to being able to make sure I get this right. I've not always gotten it right, but things about one of the most useful things that I have in my toolkit is a bookkeeper and an accountant. They make sure that I'm keeping things straight, making sure that the accounts are clear and they know where they're going. Being able to track every single piece of paper about this expense went here, this came in here, so that if 6 months down the line I realize that I haven't gotten paid from this guy, and they say, no, we paid you already. No, I have this thing. Let's go back to the tape. Being able to keep meticulous records is really, really important. Mm-hmm. Getting back to people is super important. Getting back to people as quickly and as thoroughly as possible. I am, again, not very good at this, and I struggle with this. And the thing that really helps me out, when I was in the position to get an assistant, it really dramatically changed how I was able to run the business. Just the simple fact of getting orders turned around, getting contracts turned around, getting simple questions answered that I would look at and go, okay, I'll take care of that. And then a week goes by and I look at that again and go, wow, I should have taken care of that. Being able to have a person to handle these tiny little things goes a long way toward having the public face of the business be more professional, and it's makes people feel more confident in doing business with us. Mm-hmm. Now, the third thing is one of those things that I'm actually very good at, which is making a good visual presentation. If you have a unified look for everything that you're doing, people are much, much more confident in what you can provide.
Yes.
Have a point of view. Know why you're making design choices. Mm-hmm. I have a very particular picture in my head when I think of Dad's music. It's a classic. It's a minimal. It's refined but powerful. And I go immediately to the masters of the Italian Renaissance for my type design. I go to the German engravers in the 1830s for my engraving style, and I look at Apple for web design and for how to present a package, mm-hmm. and I try to put it all together into a coherent design language.
I want to say that Matthew has done his homework. I mean, he's a researcher by temperament, I think, and he needs to know everything about a certain subject, and he will not stop until he finds out that. And that capacity, along with the fact that he has such technical skill with the computers, has made it possible for him to do what he does. I have no technical skill at computers except I can get as far as Skyping you and do my email. Matthew has been astonished over the years that I've had such limited skill, but he's learned to accommodate it. Yes.
Yeah, Matthew, I love these things that you're saying, and I mean you're a musician, you're an artist, you're a well-educated individual, and you've had to learn all these things along the way. And I really particularly appreciated your emphasis on the visual. This was driven home to me in my career when one of my first graduate assistant positions was in the design department that supported all of the university's on-campus affairs type, like student housing and things like that. And my immediate boss was a graphic designer, and she could see 100 shades of red. Were to me, but my ear has been equally fine-tuned. And I learned so much about the importance of visual communication. I want to ask a follow-up question, because you emphasized over and over, though you didn't use the term, building a team. And you listed off having a bookkeeper, an accountant, and now even an assistant.
Yeah.
What was your hesitation in building the team to begin with, and what advice could you give to people who are debating this or who could possibly use it in their lives? Because there's lots of fear and anxiety about handing over control to other people?
The first barrier was always money.
Mm-hmm.
As a person who has been offered insultingly low prices to do high-level work, I felt like I couldn't do that to people that I wanted to value. So I wanted to be able to offer somebody cash that said, I value you and I value the work that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And once we got into a position where that was more possible, I went through a couple of people before coming to the assistant I'm working with right now. Is a man called Kyle Wilbert. He's an astonishing horn player and is methodical in all the ways that I am not. And it's a gradual process of building trust. He was referred to me by a mutual friend, and we hit it off. He could see what I was trying to do and was interested in letting me run the business. And he takes great pleasure in making sure that the corners are square. And so I got very lucky, and I still am. But I go back to persistence here. I knew I needed a person. That became clear a couple of years in, when I was getting more swamped than I knew what to do with.
What have been the benefits to hiring the assistant?
Much faster turnaround of everyday items. The things that happen all the time: contracts, orders, emails, travel arrangements, flight booking, making sure that the itineraries are built, that everybody knows where they're supposed to go, that the guy who's picking dad up from the airport's number is on the sheet of paper that goes to dad before. Like the tiny dumb shit. I mean,
Right.
That's the things that can easily fall through the cracks. I have a larger vision of automation. I believe in automating as much as possible. Because if you can make decisions beforehand and you know that you always are going to want this, you should just do that and think about the hard questions.
Right. It also
yeah,
allows you to scale a little bit easier.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
With the biggest boon, which I haven't mentioned, is the printing and shipping. I use a service in Colorado, Black Ribbon Printing.
Yeah, I've used them too. They're fantastic.
Matt Franco's become a friend of mine, and we've worked together on several other copy projects, actually. And it is just an enormous weight off my shoulders to know that I can send an order to him. It will be printed properly, shipped properly, get there on time, and look amazing. High quality paper, high quality binding. And he's a musician, and his staff are musicians. So they know that, that page turn doesn't look right on the alto sax 2 part. Oh, looks like it's missing a cover page. Oh, we should just add that in. Or flag that from my review.
Sure.
Like that's a level of service that you don't get at FedEx.
No. Yeah, they have no idea about page turns.
No. So that thing about just being able to send the order off, I've been threatening to build a website for years now. I've bit off a little bit more than I can chew, but I think the payoff will be worth it. I believe that people should be able to buy music. That I think rentals are the worst combination of a library and a store. And that if you want to get your music played, you should sell the music. People will buy it, people will hold on to it, and people will play it again. And that's what you want. So to that end, being able to offer a website that has not just print and PDF purchase options, but also individual scores and individual parts in any combination you want. And we're going to have that up very soon. But I have like 15 soapboxes I can get on. If you'd like.
Well, you just opened a whole bunch of doors that I would love to walk through, but I don't know how long we want to make this interview. like in particular, selling your score instead of renting it. I mean, score rentals is a major moneymaker for publishing houses and even for some self-published composers.
Yes, it is. It's a whole lot more cost-effective to print 5 copies and charge an arm and a leg for them than it is to accept than it is to do short run or digital print.
But on the other hand, you are not as many ensembles can then afford the rental to perform it.
Not as many ensembles can afford it. You have the overhead of managing a rental library.
Yes. Yeah.
You have the hassle of having to bug people to get parts back. You have the hassle of making sure that the parts are clean when they go out. You have the hassle of bugging the people to make sure they're doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. And so there's this kind of grasping control feeling about the whole business. Like, you can play this music, but only under the precise circumstances that I allow you to. And it feels unfriendly and distancing and cold in a way which is unhelpful. This is a piece of music. I think you should play it. How can I play it? Give me some money. You can play it as many times as you want. Pay ASCAP. We're good. Yeah.
David, are you in agreement with that?
Yeah, I am. I've questioned Matthew about say sales, for instance. His business is occupied with my music. He doesn't have any other composers. And so the question is it possible to keep expanding sales, or will there be an end to it? That's the big question that I would have. And his feeling is that there will be this ongoing demand for the music that will continue to be healthy. So I have said, as far as that goes, I trust your judgment, and we'll see what happens.
Part of this is we have barely tapped the potential of where this music can go and who can play this music. We're almost comically limited to the same 45 band directors in colleges and high schools. And they are wonderful people that we've developed long relationships with and I really value. But there's so many wonderful wind bands around the world. So many wonderful wind bands in the United States. Everybody should have the opportunity to play the music. I want to make that as easy as possible.
Absolutely.
And to say nothing about what's happening in Asia, the wind band phenomenon has caught fire. Japanese wind bands are highly developed. Matthew and I were in China, in Beijing, last July, at the invitation of the Asia Pacific Band Directors Association, something you may or may not know about. And this includes people from the Pacific Rim area. And so bands are growing like crazy in China. Who would think? There it is. South Asia, things are simply growing. Australia, things are growing. So there's all that to look at.
Wow.
Yeah, Singapore, Korea, Philippines. Yeah. People are playing
wind ensemble music.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how many high schools are there in the United States? And you're only working with, well, not only, but primarily there's this small group of several dozen that just keep coming back.
There's this idea that dad's music is stupendously difficult. This is not without merit. Dad and I have been wrestling with this one for a while. But I feel like it is really important to let people know that the music is able to be played. Mm-hmm. It is not as hard as you think it is. There are options for you at every level, like all the way down to the grade 2s. If you have a band that, the most important thing about running a band is engaging your students.
Yes.
About playing music that they love. Because once they start playing music that they love, they automatically start practicing more. They already start playing their instruments more musically, and they get into it and they understand. It doesn't really matter how hard the piece is. I mean, to a certain extent it does, but most of the time, not really. The difference between a 3 and a 4 is, do I love this piece or not? If I don't care that this exists, then I'll show up and play because I'm a professional. But the students in high school look at this and go, well, whatever. I'm gonna waste time dicking around with my friends on Snapchat.
Yeah, when I'm meeting directors right now, that's what I'm trying to do, is help them with their pedagogical goals as a composer. Get kids engaged, give them deep and meaningful musical experiences, the kind I had when I was in high school. And I think that's really important.
I want to say that the center of it for me, and why it's taken so long to build everything, is that the whole thing rests just on that point of first off, good music, and then secondly, being able to work directly with a conductor and an ensemble. And I find that over all the years that I've been doing this, it's a long time now, I think of each time I go out to work with somebody as a pioneer endeavor, because these folks don't know what I'm doing and what can be done. And I will go and we will work and we will have, with my expectation of having a spectacular experience as opposed to hoping that it will happen. It is my sincere belief that we will have a spectacular event. And out of that comes the lights turning on of people saying, oh, this is possible. But it's one person at a time. There's no generalizing about this. It simply has to be taken at that level, and your willingness to go and do that kind of work. And that's where the pleasure is for you as a composer. It's the huge reward for being with people who are eagerly interested to do what you've written and to be able to assist them to do it to its full capacity. That's the stuff. That's the thing that keeps me going and feeds the composing.
I love it. So this podcast is called The Portfolio Composer. And I named it that because a modern composer has to do lots of different income-generating activities, a portfolio, if you will, to make a sustainable living. And so I want to ask you, David, and I think, Matthew, you're a part of this as you run the business. What are all of the activities that generate revenue for your business? There's obviously composing and the selling of scores, but what other things are you doing?
Well, for me, it is commissions, and then it is the fees generated by going to work with people. And so those for me are the two big ones. And then, of course, the sale of music and the performance royalties that are generated through something like ASCAP.
Have you found that your catalog had to get to a certain size for those performance royalties to be significant?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where you keep working. At a certain point, oh my God, there's a lot of work. I don't know how to speak to this, because there's no direct path that a person can take to advancing the presence of your music. The fundamental is that the music itself must be of value. And so when people come to me, say young composers come to me and ask me about the business end of things, I often smile, because they're young people who haven't yet really learned how to be composers. Mm-hmm. And that's your first task. Be a composer, and know that that's your task always, to have it unfold over years and years and years and years, to be at the edge of your best ability to do this always. That's the fundamental. Now, take a step back in history. Mozart died broke.
Yes, he did.
He had a hard time generating money. Beethoven, although he generated a fair amount of money, was up to his ears in debt when he died. So you look at those people, they were not business people. They were composers. And fundamentally, that's it. You are a composer. And the rest has to, on its own, take care of itself. I've had great good fortune. But I cannot say, apart from the fact that I have shown up and the fact that I have persistently, in this plodding way, asked people to perform my music, there is no other grand plan about how you get people to do things. If you have a successful experience with a conductor, that will lead to other successful experiences with conductors. Eventually, the word gets out, you have a successful time with this composer and this music. And on its own, that begins to collect and to get bigger and bigger and bigger. But as I said, it's taken all these years. Yes, you have to have a certain volume of music, but then you've got to have that kind of growing, devoted response from musicians.
Absolutely.
I had the great good fortune of being able to take advantage of 40 years of goodwill that came before me. All I have to do is say the name and people go, oh yes, come here. We like this. Let's do that. It's something that a new composer just straight up doesn't have.
No.
And building name recognition is a long time coming.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that you're saying, David. I think the business stuff doesn't always just take care of itself. And some people are fortunate enough to have someone run the business side, such as yourself.
Gosh, yeah.
And I think the modern composer really needs to learn an essential skill set, the same skills that Matthew's had to learn.
Absolutely.
In order to get to even close to the point that you've gotten over the length of your career.
Can I say right now, the landscape is changing hourly. It is incredibly difficult to make sure you're in the right places at the right time, to make sure you're in front of the right people and on the right platforms. Learning what those are, learning how to best use them, and learning what you want to say to whom is just showing up and paying attention, seeing what other people are doing. I think your podcast here is a great example of let's see what people are doing.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate what you're doing here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Well, I know that there's not one direct path, and defining success is very difficult. And if one person listens to this interview and says to themselves, well, I can do that too, then I feel like we've succeeded.
I have one more thought here.
Yeah, go ahead.
When you maximize your opportunities, this is about, not opportunities. When you maximize your options, this is how evolution works. It maximizes the options that are in front of it at any given point. You try to keep them open as long as possible. Keep them tending. And if you prematurely close things off, then you miss out on their possible benefits. Of course, you have to choose a path at some point, and of course, you have to start closing things off. But once you start choosing your path, maximize the options in that path. It's a surprisingly simple rule that runs really deeply.
I love it. Well, can we take a quick break and then we'll come back for the lightning round?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm very excited to announce that the Portfolio Composer has become a strategic partner with the American Composers Forum. What this means is that we are working together to build our composition community. If you have not heard of the American Composers Forum, you can find more at composersforum.org, but it is the largest composer-oriented organization in the United States. that has many resources, programs, and grant opportunities designed to help you build your career and to create your art. The biggest benefit I have gotten out of being an ACF member is the curated composer opportunity list. This might be the most extensive list that you can find anywhere, with opportunities for calls for scores, grants, and performance opportunities. So I highly recommend joining this organization. Again, you can learn more at composersforum.org. And I also want to invite you to join the Portfolio Composer community by becoming a Patreon sponsor. By joining the community, you will have access to private webinars that I do for the Patreon communities and students of my course, and as well as private coachings, one-on-one sessions, and a few other bonuses. So please go to patreon.com/portfolio composer.
Welcome to the lightning round.
If you could go back in time, what advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
Don't drink so much. Serious. That was a problem for me.
Weirdly, it would be for me, don't eat so much. So, I mean, hey.
Yeah. I think that's an almost impossible question to say in a really pointed way. Is one thing to say. I look back with a good deal of kind of warm pity for that young person, So maybe find someone to give you a really good hug, because I was a very alone 20-year-old.
What is a personal habit of yours that you feel leads to your success?
A kind of bulldog persistence in every aspect of the composing. I will not let something go until it has shown me its full value. I can't do anything less.
Curiously enough, this is, I have that same kind of quality in slightly different areas, but that thing where, if a thing needs to be right, by God, it's going to be right. And we're going to figure out why it isn't or die trying. And it's been a thing which has led to some very positive results and led to me rabbit holing a lot. But being able to understand when a thing is done, being able to understand when a thing is right, and then getting it to that point and then leaving it alone.
Now, for both of you, Matthew, you are a euphonium player. David, I don't know what you grew up playing clarinet, you said. But what is an instrument you have always wanted to learn to play, and why?
Well, I've had a lifelong desire to be a pianist, and I did not grow up as one. I began only as a college freshman to learn. And so it's been that instrument which has been my companion for my whole life. I am now a moderately good player, and that's it. I would have loved, I think, to have started as a pianist and been able to be a really fine one.
It turns out we're the same people.
Yeah.
Like being able to actually play the piano, like I can noodle around on it. I can play some chords. I could fake it at a party if I needed to.
Right.
But actually being able to play Rachmaninoff would be amazing.
Oh, wouldn't it?
That stuff is, criminy. Good stuff.
Now, this next question tends to trip people up, and I want to explain where it comes from. I am most inspired to write music after experiencing wonderful music, either live in a concert or hearing a fantastic recording of a great piece. And sometimes I'll get to the end of that experience and I'll say, oh my gosh, I wish I had written that. Not in the sense that I wish I had actually stolen that piece and written it, but I wish I had provided that experience, and I want to provide that experience again. So from that place of the love of music and pure inspiration, what is one piece of music that you wish you had written?
Oh, gosh.
Hadaway, What is Love?
What is that? I don't even know if I can begin to answer that question.
Well, let me ask it in a different way then for you, David.
Yeah, okay.
What is one piece of music that made a profound impact on your life?
Oh, all right. Well, there's a bunch there. Probably the first one would be the Rite of Spring. Second would be the Barok Concerto for Orchestra. Rimsky-Korsakov. Le Coq d'Or. I remember this from early recordings. Well, we can keep going on and on and on, but those are the things.
Okay.
All right.
Do you want to refine your answer, Matthew?
Yeah, because it does have a dope beat, though. I'm all about it.
Sure.
With the, so I grew up listening to Dad composing, and I have very strong memories of dancing around the foot of his piano as he's playing the kind of growly monster music from the saxophone sonata. But I go to something which I feel is more my own discovery, which is Philip Glass and Steve Reich and those guys. Koyaanisqatsi is a thing which I've come back to over and over again for various reasons, and there's a kind of disbelieving. Wait, you can get away with that, and it's awesome,
right?
That goes on, or the last act of Satyagraha, where it's the same scale for like 40 times in a row, and you're going, well, okay, after 4 or 5, but by the end of it, you're going, yeah, this is the tits, yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah. Well, and for those two examples, I mean, it works really good for film too. And I don't know if you watched Interstellar. The movie that came out recently. And Hans Zimmer did the music. And I remember watching that thinking, oh my gosh, he's just ripping Philip Glass off. This is Einstein on the Beach all over again.
Yeah, but he's got a really good organ.
Yeah, yes, he does. Yes, he does. So the next question is about a book. And this doesn't have to be a book about music. It could be on anything. But what is a book recommendation you could give that could benefit the personal, creative, or business lives of the Portfolio Composer listeners?
Well, the foundation for me has been the writings of Carl Jung, and so I'll give you 2 book titles there, Man and His Symbols, and the autobiography, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, those 2. These are foundational idea books about imagination and how you get there.
Great.
I'll go with Nassim Taleb's Black Swan and Antifragile. I think his idea of maximizing your exposure to positive randomness and limiting your negative exposure is quite profound. The idea of having, if you want to get hit by lightning, plant a field filled with lightning rods.
I actually really like his philosophy too. That builds resilience, and actually you can coming through the testing period, it makes you better. I heard an interview with him on another podcast where he said, if you don't really understand deep math, this book is not for you. It was really funny.
He's not wrong.
Yeah, right.
But not necessary.
Yeah.
That thing where you have a folk song that gets depth over the years of everybody touching it, everybody singing it, of like a Japanese cup which is repaired with gold to highlight the cracks. Like there's so many things that we've built an extremely fragile world. That everything is powerful things depend on things beneath it working very well. My computer depends on electricity generated, God knows how, who knows how it gets to me. And within that computer are extraordinary, interdependent systems, all of which have to depend on the others working.
Yes.
And if my power supply shorts out, if the cat walks across it, you just don't have a computer right now, and now you have to deal with that. Or if somehow the power grid goes down, all this stuff dies.
Yep.
And it's a scary place to be, but the power it affords makes us take those risks.
Yeah. Now, where can people find you on the internet, and how can they get a hold of you?
You can see full scores and recordings of all of the music of David Maslanka at davidmaslanka.com, and you may order many of those scores at maslankapress.com.
Excellent.
And to actually contact me, there's a little button on the website that says "Contact David," and I'm right here.
Excellent.
Can we emphasize that he actually responds? And it's him. He's super into it, and people seem to be scared of contacting him. It's okay. Don't be scared. He's a really nice guy.
That's been my experience so far. So.
Okay.
I would like to end the show by giving you a few minutes to say any final thoughts, or if there's anything that you wanted to discuss and we haven't, feel free.
Well, I'll simply say, here's a thought. I don't encourage anybody to be a composer anymore.
It's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Don't do this.
So it's interesting because there's so much. It's proliferating. I mean, there's so many schools of music and so many composition teachers and so many composition students. It's a hard path. In my life, my wife has often said to people who have asked her, she said, if there's anything else you can do in the world that you can think of, do that. Because it's a really, really demanding life. Now, I'm in it, I'm fully absorbed in it, and I love it. And yet I understand exactly how hard it is to do this. And so there is finally, for young composers, and there are good ones coming up, if you know in yourself that you can't not do this, you have to do this, then good luck to you. And write me a letter. It's okay, right?
David, can I ask you another question?
Yeah.
I know people are always trying to pick your brain about creativity and the music business, but what is one question that you would love to be asked, but no one ever asks you?
Oh, gee, I have no idea what that would be.
How do you get those spot-on Herb Alpert arrangements every time, man? They're just amazing. It's like,
well, here, the thing that is of deep interest to me is the fact that I have spent 40 years developing a meditation process that allows me a way of accessing imagination that is powerful for me and continues to be so. People ask around the edges of that, but nobody will go into it for themselves. And I'm kind of curious to have people go there if they want to see something from the inside of what I do.
You know, David, I meditate regularly, and it has made a profound impact on not only my physical health, but my mental health and well-being and my creativity as well.
Yep, exactly right.
Yeah. Any final thoughts from you, Matthew?
It's hard to do, man. It's I have enormous advantages of name recognition, of an incredible, like, I don't have to apologize for any aspect of what I'm selling. The music sells itself. I offer it and try not to get in the way too much. And building a thing from the ground up as a young composer, as an entrepreneur, it's just going to work. It's just getting it done. It's making sure that when people are thinking of who they want to commission, your name is first in their mind. It's when people are thinking, well, who should we have over to work with our group? Your name is first in their head. And you do that by not by saying, hey, give me a job. It's you make yourself available at parties. You go out to places where people are. You go to concerts. You congratulate people. You not afraid to say who you are and what you're doing, and make sure that you know that make sure you have a point of view, and have your business card with you, for God's sakes.
Yes. Yeah.
And have a website that when people go to it, they don't immediately leave.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's have your stuff in order.
Yeah.
Have a presence.
Well, gentlemen, it's been a real honor for me to speak with you, and I thank you so much. And I want to just let you know how valuable I think your time is. And David, I want to thank you for putting your music out into the world and affecting the lives of so many musicians, myself included. So thank you for your time.
That. Yeah. You're quite welcome. All right.
Thank you for having us.